When I look back at my life, I had two parents, right? Grew up in a home, went to church every single Sunday with my grandma. And it was about third grade that my world started to turn upside down. My parents decided to get a divorce, and it was rocky. It was not a fun divorce. My mom ended up moving 4 hours away. We were originally from Pennsylvania, and my mom moved out to here in Ohio. And, being a son, I have a little sister as well that's being affected by this. We're about 6 years apart. And being a son, you're always a daddy's boy, right? You want to hang out with dad. You don't think dad could do anything wrong. He's your hero. That's the role I was in, and really didn't really like my mom. I kind of blamed my mom for the divorce. And obviously, I think in hindsight, she was protecting me from things that I didn't necessarily need to know at that young age. Starting in third grade, it started the weekend trips of every other weekend, making that trip from Ohio to Pennsylvania, and really just not really liking that at all, and kind of blaming mom. I'd choose my dad anytime I had a chance, even to the point where I stayed with him in the summers. Me being in third grade, my sister about 3-4 years old at the time, if I remember correctly, it was through just realizing that my father may have been abusing, or actually was abusing my sister in very inappropriate ways. Looking back myself, I can see some manipulation, some verbal abuse that as a young kid I just didn't know, and my sister didn't even know. Being 3 years old, she has no idea what was happening as well, and that abuse that she experienced as well. It really changed my world and my perspective at that point. It was in that weekend that I started to realize and think back, like I was being manipulated and abused myself in ways that I didn't quite realize at a young age. That abuse just led to a lot of courts, all that stuff, and truth coming out, to the point I didn't want to have a relationship with my father. I didn't need him. I didn't really respect him. I honestly, that's a strong word, I probably hated him. It was a long process to the point where I haven't even seen my biological father since the third grade. The healing process was a long one, for not just for myself, but really my sister, who experienced way more than I ever experienced, my mom. And it was a process from there. Luckily, the story ends really, really well, and the fact of we did get the privilege of having a father figure in our life. A lot of people who know me, especially at the Findlay campus, know my dad, and they always are like, "Hey, that's your dad? You have a different last name?" And it's like, "Yeah, that's the guy who raised me. That's the guy who I get to call dad." And so the story ends really, really well in that fact of, like, me and my sister both got the opportunity to have a dad raise us, and I would say a heavenly type father figure, for sure, who always instilled those things in us. But the process of forgiveness was really that step that took a long time. And then it wasn't just forgiving him; it was, how do I start to pray for him? I don't necessarily think I need to have a one-on-one relationship with him anymore, but I think a step where I began to pray for him and just hope I see him in heaven. I don't know. I don't need to know how things are going. I don't need him in my life. I can love him from a distance. I think that's one of the things that I've learned through this process is, like, I think there are different levels of love, and that love is, I love you. I don't necessarily need to have a relationship with you, but I love you enough to forgive you and pray for you. Through the forgiveness process, for me, it's been a long journey. It's not something that happens overnight. You can, again, if you look back at my sister, it took her 20 plus years. And is there still hurt? Is there still pain? Absolutely. But I think one of the things that I learned through the process of forgiveness is that God's grace is sufficient enough through that. There's a quote that I remember hearing, when I'm forgiving, praying to God for forgiveness and asking for forgiveness of those who've done wrong to me. Whatever I can't forgive, Jesus' blood has already been shed, and that grace has already been forgiven. Jesus is covering the parts that I'm having trouble forgiving still. I think one of the things that you could ask myself or my sister that we've learned through just that forgiving process as well is that one of the reasons why we need to forgive is so that it doesn't become an aspect of our life that dictates where our life is going to go. Because we're bigger than that, and we have an opportunity to still to do good work, right? And that's no longer a part of who we are. It's a part of our story, but it's our life isn't dictated by that anymore.